You bet. All right, well, good afternoon. Thanks for joining us today. As we approach the end of the year, typically what we'll do is share information on our crime stats, our drug seizure numbers, things like that, more in the beginning of the year, February, March timeframe. We wanted to, we're going to still do that, but wanted to give an update now as well, as this has been a unique year in a lot of fronts, and we all know why that is. But it's also been a very productive year and a strong year by Sioux Falls PD once again. And I wanted to start today by just again reinforcing this graphic. And we talk about this graphic a lot internally. The public maybe doesn't see it as much, but these are the priorities of our administration right now. And they center around really four core pillars or four core principles. And one of those is safety and health. So when people look at our budget priorities, spending priorities, different initiatives we're tackling, most of the time you can line them up with one of these. And so when we don't spend in certain areas or we don't put allocation into certain areas, it's because if everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. And right now public safety is certainly a priority for our administration and for the city. I hear regularly from residents and from citizens that they want to ensure that they're living in a safe city, that our police department is properly resourced to make sure we live in a safe city. And so we want to share a little bit more about that today. So as we get going here, as our city grows, we add anywhere from 3,000 to 4,000 or 5,000 people a year some years. So does crime. Crime is part of a growing city. And that's not to just accept it, but it is to accept reality, that we will see more crime as you have more people. To that end, COVID has created some additional challenges this past year with crime. As you'll hear in a little bit from the chief, there's certain crime categories that are dramatically up. And I think you'll immediately recognize the connection between COVID and some of those categories where we're seeing an uptick in crime. Just last night, I know Sam probably addressed it at the briefing this morning, we saw a 16-year-old young man lose his life from a gunshot wound. And unfortunately, we're seeing crime challenges with our youth. I'm not going to talk about this today, but it's one of the reasons why I'm very bullish on mentorship and mentorship initiatives and trying to get to these youth who, in some cases, are the results of failed parental situations, failed environments. And the crime challenges we're seeing in our youth is very real. And we're not running from that challenge. We know it exists. And I'm sure the chief will talk about that as well. One thing, though, that I want to touch on, and you may haven't seen this yet, the chief is going to talk about a lot of our public safety priorities that we've worked on this past year. But I really want to foot stomp this one because I'm very proud of it. And I'm proud of it because we are in an environment right now where encouraging additional investments in law enforcement in some communities is controversial. And it's not controversial in Sioux Falls. We're investing in the resources, the salaries, the staffing levels, the training, and in this case, the facilities to ensure that we are training our first responders, our fire rescue members, our police officers to keep this community safe. We passed a bond a few months ago that is going to pay for the construction of a $50 million public safety training center, a monumental investment in public safety in our community that will benefit this community for decades to come. And I'm very proud of us being able to get that accomplished this past year, given the environment and the landscape that we're in right now. However, when we talk about crime and enforcement, and I'd be remiss if I just didn't mention the overused and grossly inaccurate term of defunding the police. And what that mantra has really sought to mean in certain communities. As an ex-marketing guy, it's a bad tagline. What they mean by that is, how can we continue to invest in not just police officer and enforcement resources, but getting people help when and where they need it? And it's my belief that we can do both without defunding anything. We can build public safety training centers and provide our officers the resources and training they need, but we can also invest in some of those needs-focused services. A couple examples being these two. The link right next door that you all know about, which will help people experiencing addiction and mental health challenges, some of which find themselves as frequent flyers in our prison system, in our court system. And we have to do better in realizing that some of those folks don't need an incarceration. These aren't incarceration or misdemeanor or arrest challenges. There's other issues that we have to deal with. We also, for the first time this year, have a community resource officer focused specifically on dealing with those in our community struggling with those issues of mental health and addiction. And we've seen wins from that already early on. And so when we have difficult and vulnerable populations that we're dealing with in our community, instead of sending an officer, we can send a community resource officer who's specially trained in some of those interdiction services to try and de-escalate a situation and get someone the help that he or she may need. So there's enforcement challenges for sure, and we're going to keep working on those, but we're also investing in some of these resources that will benefit our community. And so I'm going to ask Chief Burns to come up now. The Chief's going to get into some specifics with some of our seizure numbers and some of not only the challenges that we've seen this past year, but certainly some wins that we've seen as well, especially on the narcotic seizure side, which continues to be of high importance to me and to our community. So, Chief, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank everyone in the media for coming today and allowing me to share some of these important updates regarding the public safety of our city. I appreciate the words of Mayor Tenhaken and the incredible support that our PD team has received from him and his administration. We're in a place right now at the police department that I could not have imagined a few years ago. And that is primarily due to his desire, and that is City Council, for a strong and effective police team, one that is well-resourced, well-trained, and frankly well-regarded by the community that we serve. Throughout my remarks today, you're going to hear about some challenges, but you're also going to hear about some successes. And through it all, Mayor Tenhaken has been our #1 supporter. He's been there for us and seeing through on what he has told us that was his priority and his intent. And that's made a tremendous difference to every single member of our department and frankly for our city. This past year, our department continued to provide a very high level of service to our community, all the while combating the criminal elements in our city that threaten our quality of life. Many crime categories we track, in fact, have shown some upticks this year, some of them certainly significant. The specific reasons for this are pretty complex, but I'm confident that the COVID-19 pandemic has played a role in those increases. The reality is that most criminals are opportunists, and they show little regard for the health and safety matters which concern the broader population. And our officers have earnestly pursued these criminals, and they'll continue to do so. 2020 will be notable, certainly for many things, and the challenges to my team in terms of service, delivery, maintaining a healthy and viable force to meet the citizen and public safety expectations are primary among them. I couldn't be prouder of how every member of our police department has stepped up to these challenges. They kept it in focus and quickly pivoted to the newest circumstance, and they kept delivering. With everything going on, it has been a very busy year for our team, and I look forward to sharing the full crime statistics for 2020 with you in February, as we've done in past years. But today, I specifically want to focus on the central part of our efforts to keep our city safe. To each side, you will see, and behind me, some statistics that tell a key story about 2020 in regards to the work of our Drug Task Force and our Narcotic Crimes Unit. Some of these numbers are in near record territory, which reminds us all that even in the midst of a year with the pandemic, social unrest, and some political turmoil, the specter of drug crime and addictions is still ever present with us, as well as all the associated crimes that go along with that. These enforcement teams exist to keep the harmful drugs off our streets and hold those who use drugs and traffic them to account. And through the end of November, the Drug Task Force has conducted 126 search warrants, 479 total operations. They have seized 57 firearms and over $241,000 in cash related specifically to drug crimes while investigating 2,676 narcotics cases. But perhaps the most telling part of their efforts is that to date, our drug seizures for fentanyl is just over 308 grams, heroin at 279 grams, and methamphetamine at 54.4 pounds. All three of these are in the top amounts for these categories in the history of our department. In regards to the fentanyl seizures alone, this is tens of thousands of potentially fatal doses that this team has taken off our streets, taken out of circulation, and potentially out of our schools. I am also heartened by the fact that our reported drug overdoses and overdose deaths are fully 1/3 lower than at this same time last year. What I can tell you is this is not the trend nationally. Typically, those are up across the country. I'm confident that the task force efforts this year have made an impact here, and the seizure successes are part of this, what we're seeing. Together with the fact that our department has made 1,167 arrests for possession and distribution combined of these three hard narcotics, you can see that our collective efforts in drug enforcement have made a significant impact on this criminal drug element. I want to thank specifically the Minnehaha County Sheriff's Office, the South Dakota Division of Criminal Investigation, the Drug Enforcement Administration, as well as the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, and Homeland Security Investigations for all providing personnel, material, and investigative support of the Drug Task Force operations. We all celebrate these successes together. I also want to specifically note the work performed by our Narcotic Crimes Unit. You may recall that this unit was formed along with requests from the mayor to respond in a rapid fashion to investigate neighborhood-level complaints concerning suspected drug use and trafficking. These conditions contribute to neighborhood blight, declining quality of life, and cause specific safety concerns in neighborhoods across our city. This year, the NCU was alone responsible for conducting 103 Crime Stopper tip follow-ups and contacts, 12 search warrants, 155 arrests, and the investigation of 678 individual narcotics cases. By any measure, this team has been a success and contributes daily to the public safety goals of our department and city. In addition to the successes of our drug enforcement teams, I also want to give you an update, as the mayor noted, on some of our other important initiatives involving our department. I could go on and on about the challenges faced by our department and city in 2020, but this past year has also seen some significant wins for our department, historical wins that will continue to change how we operate and reap rewards for decades to come. The approval and addition of the Public Safety Training Center, Southwest Report to Work location, and the Remote Law Enforcement Training Academy, hosted by our department, represent the culmination of literally years of preparation and coordination. It is hard for me to quantify how difficult it is to conceptualize, plan, and gain support for any one of these items, let alone all three. Simply put, I can't overstate the benefit and positive change for our department and city that these three major initiatives represent. So first of all, the Public Safety Training Center, as you know, was recently approved and funded by the council, and it is an active schematic design phase. This will be the preeminent training facility, not only in the state, but in the region. The facilities being built there for our police and fire teams feature state-of-the-art elements that will allow a degree of training that we simply have not been able to do before. Featuring a police firing range, emergency vehicle operations course, fire burn buildings, and advanced technical training props, this center will produce the best trained and the most proficient police officers and firefighters in the history of our city. They will rival that of the departments anywhere in the nation. The investment in this project by this administration and the City Council will reap rewards in terms of real, life-saving, and property-preserving capability for decades to come, and is exactly what our city needs as we pass the 200,000 mark in population and approach 100 square miles of city limits. The Southwest Station remodeling work continues in earnest. This building, located at 4000 West 57th, is in an ideal location situated in the Southwest. This project was first suggested by a 2018 facilities study commissioned by the city and is envisioned to decrease police transit and response times to the large residential and business population districts in the southwest part of our city. And again, it is ideally located to do just that. The station is on schedule to open in February of 2021 and will have 21 police officers and 8 marked police units assigned there. This frees up considerable parking, locker room, and workspace at the downtown law enforcement center. It will feature indoor parking for the police vehicles and contain its own secure evidence drop-off location. This station marks the future of remote location policing in our city and is the prototype for future operations in the remaining 3 quadrants. You also may recall that in early 2020, our department submitted a proposal to the Office of the South Dakota Attorney General and DCI law enforcement training staff to conduct a remote law enforcement training academy at our own department. Law enforcement training in Pierre conducts 3 basic certification classes per year, and historically we have been able to secure 8 seats in each of those classes. However, due to continued growth of our department and the need for more officers on a yearly basis, they were simply not able to keep up with our growing need for basic certified officers. Law enforcement training and DCI have never before conducted or authorized a remote law enforcement academy in the state, but they carefully considered our proposal and ultimately agreed to have a collaborative remote academy, which started with a class of 15 Sioux Falls Police officers and 3 officers from other jurisdictions in August of this year. That session, the 175th Basic Academy class, graduated in Sioux Falls on November 13th with a 100% pass rate and as a resounding success. We started our second remote class, the 177th Basic Academy, with 12 SFPD recruits and 2 from other jurisdictions on October 26th. The successful start of this class returns our department to 272 sworn officers, 2 away from our authorized strength. This was only possible through this collaboration with the Attorney General's office, and that has allowed fully 11 more officers to be in our Sioux Falls ranks at this time, greater than what would have normally been possible with the previous model and time frame. I want to specifically give a shout out to our department training cadre for putting together a winning proposal, for believing in what was possible, and an incredible amount of preparation and work in the realization of that successful partnership with the state. The benefit to our department and city of full police staffing cannot be overstated, and this achievement only occurred because dedicated professionals made it happen. So you can see we have much to be thankful for and excited about concerning the future of our department. We are on the cusp of a new, strong labor contract with the FOP and are already hiring for our next recruit class in February of 2021. We have seen an incredible influx of applications from certified officers and others across the country, and are hearing from them that they are looking for an agency where they can do the job they love, receive competitive compensation, and that has the support of the community and city administration. These officers are liking what they see in Sioux Falls and in our department, and we are intent to hire the best of them. With these accomplishments and possibilities in hand, we look optimistically and confidently towards the coming year. We remain deeply thankful for the support of our great community and are honored to serve them. I want to thank you again for coming today and hearing us, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
All right, not hearing anything. Thank you, guys.
Maybe we should talk about the priority in the next year.
Absolutely. Well, the priority in the next year is to get up to that authorized strength number, to get all these officers, which is currently about 27, in the training pipeline, fully certified and out there on the streets. The priority is going to continue to be to hire the best trained and diverse police officers that we can to serve this city and to continue to reflect the community we serve, to keep ourselves healthy, to keep ourselves in a way that we can best serve our citizens, and keep on with the strong tradition of service of the Sioux Falls Police Department.
And I want to add one thing to that too. In addition to the recruiting, the challenges of narcotics will continue to be a focus for our department in the year ahead. You know, with the Chief talked about the record fentanyl seizures and you know, thousands and thousands of doses there that would potentially kill people in our community. We have to continue to equip our NCU, our drug task force, to get that stuff off the streets. Many times when you look at these crime numbers, there's a narcotics thread through a lot of this. And so we're not going to take our foot off the gas on this. I would also be remiss if I didn't mention in my earlier remarks the incredible leadership we have in our PD right now is so strong. I mean, some of our lieutenants are here and our assistant chief is here, but all the way down the ranks, there's just a real strong SFPD right now. And that is something that our residents need to know, that you have an incredible department. Chief mentioned the good labor piece we have. We have a great relationship with the union in our office, and that's created a real great culture in the organization. And so we're committed to ensuring that continues in the year ahead also.
One more question for either one of you, but based on what voters in South Dakota said about marijuana, would you start de-emphasizing some of that part of the enforcement? I don't know. If that's gonna be less emphasis.
Well, obviously the marijuana piece will change, but certainly one of our expectations is that the meth, the fentanyl, the heroin, that doesn't decrease because marijuana is legal. And in fact, a lot of times you see the converse of that. And so that's what we're preparing for, is what does legalized cannabis in our state do to some of these other crime numbers, some of these other narcotics numbers. And it's still an unknown here. We've seen what happens in other states, and we're working through on how we have to adjust accordingly. But it's going to be a year of learning after we see how the legislature seeks to deal with this, how we're going to authorize that in Sioux Falls, the dispensaries, how that will work, how many there will be. And so there's going to be a year of education for us as well on that.
Yeah, I would echo that. We have much to learn. We're just now kind of diving into detail on some of what Amendment A means, and some things have to get sorted out, certainly with the legislature. And we need to meet more with our state's attorney's office and get a sense. You know, we tackle these things as a team. You know, we're the enforcement piece, but we work closely as a stakeholder with the state's attorney's office, and so we'll come to those answers together. But again, there's much to learn there. But we're absolutely not going to take any emphasis, personnel or resources or time away from these incredibly important efforts with our drug task force, and frankly, every officer that enforces the law in Sioux Falls. So again, it's a strong thing that we're looking at. It's clearly a priority for us, and you're going to see us continue.
Chief, I know the mayor mentioned that there's been some recent shootings. Unfortunately, some teenagers been shooting. I don't know if you have a comment on that or what you know about that.
Yeah, frankly, it sickens me. I mean, you have all manner of teenagers involved in violence. There's a large desensitization of violence amongst some of the youth in our city, and we're really going to have to put emphasis on that. We're trying to put our finger on some of those exact causes, but there's no substitute for good parenting. There's no substitute for people being in community, whether that's in school, whether that's in their, you know, at their church, or just in their community, in their neighborhood. You know, some of these kids just need mentorship. They need somebody to help them get through this tough time, and not maybe look to some sort of unhelpful or criminal element because that's the cool thing right now. And it's a challenge for us, but it's certainly one that our team's up to do our part on, but we are concerned.